What's up, family? This is Most Ray with the Underground Footy Podcast. We picking up steam. Players Edition, Episode 6. Two of DMV's finest, Dylan Williams, Ramsey Ray. Let's go. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to be sitting here with Dylan Williams, who's now playing for Boston University, and Ramsey Ray, who is now playing for College of Charleston. And in this episode, we're going to talk about the pathway to actually getting to a D1 soccer program. You know, the myths or the thoughts prior, and then the realities of it. And hopefully this will help out some of the what you call them youngers as they try to follow on this path. So I'll start with you, Dylan. All right. So tell us about how you got started, I guess, and how it's going. All right. So go ahead. Let me know what's going on.
Yeah, well, I started playing soccer when I was 4. PG Young Boys, Quick Feet was my first club. Kind of got into it just because both my older brothers were playing, so I kind of just like gravitated toward it, I guess. Um, so I was up at PG Young Boys up until U9, U10, and then like we kind of like split. Everybody went their own ways. I went to a few different clubs, ASA first or Future first, and then I went to a club named ASA. And then
Okay. Now,
around
what did ASA stand for?
Arundel Soccer Association, I think.
Okay, because there's two ASAs, so we just want to make sure people know the difference. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, that was the one. And then around U12, that's when like one of my teammates at ASA told me about a new DA team, Baltimore Armor, holding tryouts. So then I went to those tryouts, and then U12 I made the team, and I was at Armor until U19 until I went to college.
Okay. Now, what are some of the differences you saw as you came up through the ranks? So let's say you're with PG Young Boys. What was that experience like?
Well, yeah, obviously PG Young Boys, that group of people was very talented. Like we had a bunch of great players, but it was I'd say the main difference was just the competition we were playing. Like it was kind of difficult to find like good teams to play against because we often had to play like 2 years up with PG Young Boys. So I'd say the biggest thing was going to Baltimore Armor. It was like the people that I was around, like also great players, just like PG Young Boys, but just being in a league where you're playing against other competitive teams and you're really being able to grow on the field. And like, yeah, just the competition just got a lot better.
Okay. Ramsey, let's hear. What's your story?
Yeah, so like Dylan, I did start. My first club was PG Young Boys, um, and I was with PG Young Boys up until I went to Bethesda, playing up for their U8s. And there I stayed at Bethesda up until I finished my U14 year. And throughout that period, there were a lot of a lot of great players. I would say like a lot of players who I played at Bethesda with from my first year there. Like I'm still friends with to this day. They're all doing their own things and they're all still balling out, which I love to see. Um, and then after my U14 year at Bethesda, I went to the Columbus Crew and I played there from my U15 year up until my first U19 year or my U18 year, however you want to call it. And then after that first U19 year at the Crew, I went to play a year at DC United. So I came back home from the Crew. I know at those 4 years, played with DC. It helped me out a lot. It was a great experience. And then from DC, I had committed to College of Charleston.
Okay, so now you kind of skipped some steps, and I'm gonna get to that next. When we talk about now, we want to talk about like the process of getting to college, right? Because all those clubs you mentioned, it was kind of like you try out or you're recruited, you go there, You're playing, somewhat in your community. And do you feel like you got comfortable, or did you, when you had to go and find a college to play, what was that process like? So Dylan, what was your process for ending up at Boston University?
I mean, honestly, at first, like when I first started getting around like the looking to play in college age, I just started sending a bunch of emails to a bunch of schools
And
that
at what point were you doing this? When did you start actually trying to reach out to these schools?
probably like 15 years old, 15,
Uh-huh.
16. So
All right,
I
what grade is that?
sophomore year of high school.
Oh, okay, okay.
So I probably started sending emails to to schools that I was interested in, just like good academics, good at soccer also. I I sent it to mostly Division 1 schools. I wasn't really too interested in Division 3, but and then after I started sending emails, some coaches will respond, some won't. Uh, and then also Armor, we had like a bunch of showcases, so that was really that process. And then it was really the MLS Flex U17 year. That's really where I started getting a lot of interest from Division 1 schools. And it was one game we played Rapids. That's when Boston University first reached out to me. Before they reached out to me there, I didn't really know about the school. Like it wasn't one of the schools I reached out to. I didn't know too much about it. But ever since they reached out to me, I did some research and I hopped on a phone call with them, and instantly I was interested. Like I loved Boston when I visited. Um, yeah, so they had me up on a visit twice. I went up to visit twice, and then they offered me, and then probably committed about a week later. Like I committed the summer before my senior year started.
Okay. Now, in this process, you visited more than one school, I take it.
Yeah, yeah, I
All
had a
right, let's
bunch.
let's talk about that because you kind of cleaned it up like, oh, they reached out, I went. But talk about like the process of even the conversations you had. Um, this not necessarily, you can name the schools, it's not a big deal. That you visited. We won't talk about which ones made concrete offers or not, but let's just say, tell me some of the schools you visited in the process. Now, I'm going to assume, well, you weren't just recruited by D1 schools, other
No,
schools. Okay, so
yeah.
let's talk about that.
Okay, yeah. So the first schools that I really got like a lot of interest from, the first schools I visited were D3 NESCAC schools. So schools like Bowdoin, Colby, Bates, all in Maine. Those were the first three schools I visited. Um, yeah, I mean, I liked those schools. I mean, I always like had sights on going Division 1, so I wasn't like too invested in them. But yeah, I visited those schools, and then the first Division 1 school that gained interest in me was UMBC, and I started talking to them a lot. Got on a few phone calls. I had visits with UMBC. I had a visit with Cornell, UNC Wilmington. But yeah, there were a lot of schools that reached out to me and that I like got on the phone with once or twice, but really didn't amount to anything. But yeah, the concrete ones were really UMBC, UNC Wilmington, and Boston University.
Was it a hard decision?
Yeah, yeah, it was. It was mainly between UMBC and Boston University. It ultimately just came down to because UMBC is really close to where I live. So it really
Mm-hmm.
just came down to like I didn't want to be that close to home.
Okay, okay. Hey, Ram. All right, so let's talk about your process for getting to College of Charleston.
Yeah, so on the first, I believe it was the that I believe first June following my sophomore year. Um, I had Ohio State University and Penn State reach out to me, and that was kind of my first taste of kind of like the college recruiting. And then with those two schools, I was texting and I was talking with them, and I ended up going on an unofficial visit to Ohio State University. Nice campus, real close to where I was currently, same city, Columbus, Ohio. Um, and then I also went on a visit to Penn State. Um, and from there, I was talking with both of those coaches and both those programs for a good while. And that's kind of when I kind of realized just how like this recruiting process wasn't as straightforward as I maybe thought it was. I initially I was thinking, they want me, they take me on a visit, so things will work out, and then I'll commit. But then there were things like maybe they just would maybe stop talking to me or stop responding, and then you could do
Mm-hmm.
your own. It wouldn't take much research to find out how they're signing other players. And that's kind of when I
Right.
realized just how cutthroat and on top of it you have to be for this recruiting process. So
Mm-hmm.
later on, I had some talks with Drexel as well. Went with the to a visit at
Mm-hmm.
Drexel in Philadelphia. Um, and I was speaking with the George Mason coach, and I had been on campus with George Mason a number of times, for several reasons, including just DC. We had trained there a couple of times as well. Nice campus. And I was speaking with Dayton as well. And a lot of these calls and talks, they seemed, I felt for a lot of them, it didn't quite move the way I thought it would, because I was spending a lot of time speaking and hopping on calls with a lot of the assistant coaches. It didn't seem quite like I was getting to the point where I was speaking with the head coaches and hearing maybe how interested they were in me. It was a lot of the assistant coaches who maybe were a little bit more focused on the scouting and recruiting part of it. Um, and as well as Northwestern, but it's kind of the same thing. Maybe talking, and maybe the line went cold for a bit, and then maybe talking again maybe a few months later. And yeah, it definitely wasn't an easy process. And during this time, I was sending out a lot of emails, reaching out to many coaches and other programs, listening to what everybody had to say, of course. And a good friend of the family and coach, Coach Bale, who had coached my brother at DC United, and he's ran some private sessions with me, and some camps, and just all around great guy. Was living in Charleston at the time, and he spoke about how he had a great relationship with the program, and he thought the program had a lot to offer me. So through Coach Bale, I got in touch with in the program, being Coach Rob Seaton, Coach Max Correa, and Coach Keith Wiggins, eventually the head coach. And through that, I felt that College of Charleston was really transparent with me throughout it all. They're really straightforward. Um, they seemed really excited about me, and I felt like this was like the first school that really seemed like they had really wanted me. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and obviously Charleston's a wonderful city. That the atmosphere.
So did you? I mean, did you visit? I mean, what?
Oh, yes, yes, yes. Yeah, so I did go on an official visit this this spring of my senior year. And on the visit, I actually stayed with a couple of guys who are also from our area, from Virginia and from DC. And they were great. The team was great. Everybody, it felt like somewhere I could definitely call my home. You could see how serious it was, when I went to watch the training, but at the same time in the locker room, everybody was family, which was what I was definitely looking for in the program that I wanted to spend my time and develop at. Um, so yeah, I mean, then I committed to College of Charleston that same spring, and
Okay, Dylan, I want to talk to you a little bit about your locker room and the guys. When you went on your visit, did you
Mhm.
spend time with the team?
Yeah, so I went on two visits at Boston University. So the first one, it was during the summer, so the guys weren't back in school. So it was kind of just the coach showing me around the campus and like telling me about the school. And then before I committed, I wanted to go up again so I could like meet the guys. So I went up during like during the preseason and the guys were back. So I stayed with them. I went to a practice and then I kind of just spent the day with the team, got to meet some of the guys. And yeah, that was really the main decision. They were all cool. It really looked like a family. So I really enjoyed it. And that was when I made my decision that I was ready.
Okay, now guys, Ramsey, I'll ask you. Once you had, let's say you made your commitment, now, what did you do next? Like what were your thoughts on preparation for going to now you know where you're going? What are you gonna do to prepare?
Yeah, so it started initially with me just watching the games, you know what I'm saying, watching them closely, you know, not just from a standpoint of watching college soccer, but watching maybe how I felt like what I felt I could do in certain situations and how I could help the team, you know, just watching extra closely. And then, you know, speaking with the coaches and communicating with them on how, you know, what position they saw me in or how they would like to use me on the field. And then practicing those in training. So you know, I was told that, you know, I probably maybe rotating inside some, you know, receiving the ball in the pocket, you know, and facilitating the build out essentially. So then that means that in training, you know, when we were playing some small sided, I would put myself in a more central role, try to simulate what I would see in the college game, because initially I was more of a wider player, and I knew that I could do it, but I definitely wasn't going to wait till preseason to, you know, start, you know, making sure and getting good at it. So yeah, a lot of it is just for me was just communicating with my coaches on what they wanted to see from me and what they like, so I can make sure I kept that, you know, up to standard while also, you know, just growing as a player in general.
Okay. And Dylan, what did you do to prepare once you knew where you were going?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much the same as well as I think a big part of the college soccer game is also the physical side. So being ready physically with your body, getting stronger, getting faster. So I would communicate with the coaches and see kind of workouts, running packets that I can do to prepare myself for when I go in the spring or in the preseason. So I think not only the technical side is very important, but also just physically preparing your body for the next level is also very important.
Okay. All right. Let's talk about preseason. All right. Now, you guys have gone through preseasons your whole lives in preparing for either club, academy ball, right? All right, Ram, what's the difference in a preseason for college soccer? For college
Um,
soccer season, I mean.
yeah, so when our preseason had first started, actually, there was a tropical storm coming through Charleston. So, you know, our first exhibition match was against Watford. So they were actually, you know, they were kind enough to let us use their training field for those weeks leading into our match against them. So it was two a days. You know, it was my first taste of what, you know, two a day sessions. You know, and it's rough on the body at first. Definitely, it takes some getting used to. Um, but I think it also showed, you know, it showed me, you know, what I was capable of, you know, because, you know, those high and those very intense sessions twice a day aren't something that I maybe thought that I could like, not that I couldn't do it, but something that I thought I could do to that level. And like it was, you know, it was really eye opening for me, because it also not only did it show me what like what I was going to be playing against in college soccer, but what the expectations of me were. You know, this is not, you know, this isn't just, you know, club ball or, you know, academy ball. Like now, you know, we're playing with, you know, grown men, you know, big boys, and you know, it was really intense. You know, really eye opening. Had to learn maybe what wouldn't work against these older guys that might have worked, you know, with your old team when you're playing with guys your age. Um, and then, of course, you know, like Dylan said, it's just the physical side of things, you know, because you can't get away with a lot of those things. You might have to play smarter, play a bit quicker, you know, be smarter with your movement off the ball. But, you know, preseason was definitely great. And it definitely set the tone for what the season was going to look like, because it is a lot of games, a lot of training, a lot of load. But as a whole, preseason was a lot of fun.
All right. And Dylan, what was it like for you? Let's talk about the difference between, when you were at Baltimore Armor and the competition you went up against, and then when you showed up at Boston, from the physical side, and like what are the age ranges, and what did you notice that you were
Yeah,
playing against?
yeah. Well, obviously, college, we're playing against older guys. So our team wasn't that old. We just had a few like fifth year, few graduates. But um, I mean, I also was the only freshman on my team this past fall. So that was definitely a transition period, being the youngest.
You were the only freshman?
Yeah, I was the only freshman on the team.
Mm.
So
Wow.
being the youngest, not really having a class, so that was definitely a transition period. But yeah, at Baltimore Armor, like you're playing against guys your own age. So obviously the physical side of things, you may not, there are definitely going to be some people that may be more physically um or have a better advantage physically than you, but it's still around the same level. But once you get to college, you're playing with these older guys. There are going to be people that have been playing their college for 4 years, so they know the game more. They know what to expect more. So that's definitely a transition period. But also the two a days, like Ram said, it was like the first time I've done two a days real, like for real. I think the good thing about BU's preseason was we got there on a Monday, started training on Tuesday, and then our first like scrimmage game against another college was that Friday. So we really got
Mm.
in very quickly. Coach gave me opportunities, gave everybody opportunities. So that was really good to get confidence building for the actual season.
Hmm. And Ram, what did your freshman class look like? How many did you have?
Yeah, about 8 or 9, just off the top.
Wow.
Yeah, we had a good amount of freshmen. So
Okay. And then on the other end, you know, so you were considered a young team, you think?
not necessarily. We had a pretty sizable roster, and on that team we
Hmm.
also did have a good bit of seniors and grad students. So I wouldn't quite say we were a young team. I'd say we were about average because it definitely evened out, with the older guys as well.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So now you guys are waiting for your first game of the season. And I'm sure you know that, like, being freshmen, that it could be tough. It could be tough. So what did your coaches kind of let you know about you going into the season? All right, Dylan.
Um, I mean, to be honest, he never really like explicitly was like, I have big things for you this season. I want you to get PT, but we had three preseason games. Each one of those games, I increasingly got more minutes in the games. So just knowing that, I went into the first game expecting to like, there's a chance that I get in this game, and just once you get in the game, you just have to take advantage of your opportunities. The main thing is
What
always
was it as you expected? Like, or was it more intense, less intense? Was it just what you thought it was going to be? What was the experience like?
I think I think it was what I was expected because I had already done the three preseason games against other college teams. So I think
Mhm.
those definitely helped me get used to this first opener. So I think it was as expected. I don't really think it was much different than the preseason games. There was a lot of talk going into the game because our first game was against UNH. At the time, they were ranked 9 in the country. So there was a lot of talk behind that, but it was never really like wow, this is crazy. Like this is much different than like the preseason games.
Okay. And Ram, tell me about when you guys opened your season.
Yeah. So we had opened our season with a bit of a chip on our shoulder, um, because we didn't we didn't win any of our exhibition games, right? So like throughout those exhibition games, we saw the right ideas we were trying to implement, and we definitely noticed the team were growing, but we didn't get a result yet. But I was also happy to see that nobody on the team got discouraged. I mean, we all kept on just was playing our game, and then starting the beginning of the season, we played against our first game was against Coastal. Um, yeah, our first game against Coastal, non-conference. And we had went into it, and then we started off the game losing. We went down, and then our keeper got in a bit of a messy duel, and the ambulance had to come, and it was just it was really like it could have definitely rattled us if we had let it. Um, but we didn't. We kept on playing, and then we ended up coming back and then winning that season opener, which was just really good because going and having 3 exhibition games and not getting a result from any of them, to win a game like that with so much adversity is definitely something that kind of it can help us get some momentum and with a bit of a chip on our shoulder. Now for me personally, that game I came in later, maybe 15 minutes to play. Um, but in that time, I definitely I had a good impact, and the coaches let me know that they were happy with what they saw. Um, but I mean, yeah, I it was a good season opener just to set the tone for us.
Okay. Now, both of you guys, your teams were relatively successful this year. I mean, obviously, national championships to go, no matter where you're playing from. But you did have a successful season. But both of you actually did come across something that wasn't the norm, injury, right? So let's talk about that. Dylan, you and Ramsey's, I think, got injured around the same time, if I remember correctly. But all right, so Dylan, tell me about, like, not necessarily what the injury was, but the process when it happened. Because I know for you in particular, I don't believe you'd ever had an injury.
Yeah. This was the first injury I've ever had, so it was definitely something that I wasn't used to, something I had to get accustomed to. But yeah, the worst part about it was I was back home. We were playing against Loyola, so it was right in the hometown. All my family was there. I had some friends there from high school that came to watch, and yes, as soon as I got in the game, I turned to like make a run in behind, and I just felt my hamstring go, and it was like I was like, "There's no way this is happening right now." I was like, "This quite possibly could be the worst game for this to happen." But yeah, so that injury happened, I think September 21st. Um, so yeah, I was out for about a month. I missed a big stretch of games right in the middle of the season, like 4 or 5 games. Um, yeah, that was very difficult. Just going to training every day and knowing that I can't really help the team right now, can't play.
So how
Um,
did you deal with it mentally? Like, how did it hit initially? How did you kind of work through it? Things like that.
yeah, mentally it was a shock. It was at first it was just like, wow, I can't believe like I came to the school playing soccer and like it was one of my joys at school and I couldn't do that. I think one thing that really helped is picking a school not just for the sport, because then if this does happen, soccer is taken away, you have an injury, and you're just at the school, you don't really enjoy it unless you're playing soccer, then that's gonna be rough. But I made a lot of good friends. That's really what got me through it mentally,
Hmm.
knowing that I would be able to come back at the end of the season. Because initially, when it first happened, we thought it was way worse than it actually was. And then I got it checked out, said I was going to be out for probably like 2 to 4 weeks, which ended up being 4 weeks. But knowing
Hmm.
it was all about just preparing, knowing that there was a stretch at the end of the season that I could come back for. And that was the main goal, just trying to get healthy, knowing that at the end I can come back and help my team.
And what about you, Ram? Tell me about your adventure.
Yeah, so it wasn't my first injury. I had been injured in the past, but it was definitely different in that it was in my first college season. And what that means is, these are a lot of games. You might hit 2 games a week a lot of times. So I
Hmm.
got injured in what I believe was maybe the fourth game of the season against Queens. Um, I strained my hip flexor, and at first I thought I just kind of tweaked it. But then as I kept on playing, it was just getting worse and worse. And I made it through the game. Um, and then by the end of the game, I was struggling to walk. I got some ice on it, and then my coach had asked me because he had saw me with the ice on it. He had said, "Is everything all right?" And I explained to him what the trainer said, and the first thing he told me was he asked me why didn't I go down, um, and for me, I had just got subbed in, maybe 20 minutes left in the game. I wanted to make a statement, and just getting subbed in, and then getting hurt and having to go down was just something I just didn't really I just couldn't
You
I
couldn't
couldn't do.
imagine at the time. Yeah.
Exactly. And then he had explained to me that because following the injury I wasn't quite playing the way I normally would. Maybe I wasn't as explosive, or you know and he explained, he said, you got to tell us these things as well, because maybe we didn't know he had an injury, and we would have thought that maybe he just wasn't ready to get subbed in yet, you know and it was just, a
Mm-hmm.
lot of it was just, he was just talking about kind of being mature and being smart about it, because he understood that I had something to prove, and that I was a freshman, I was trying to earn my minutes. But he said, at the end of the day, the season's short, and we just got to be smart about these things.
Mm.
That was definitely something that was really big for me, because at the moment I was just thinking of my emotions. I wasn't really thinking with my head, because I should have
Mm-hmm.
definitely gone down, and my strain wouldn't have been nearly as long if I had just went down when I had initially felt
Mm-hmm.
it.
So
Um,
so you missed more games than Dylan did. Um, ultimately before you were brought like declared able to play,
yeah, I was
you
out for, I
know.
think, about a month and a half or so,
Mm-hmm.
and you know it was especially difficult because by the time I got back, that's a lot of games I'm missing. It's about it's maybe about near half the season. So
Mm.
by that point, I'm back to playing. The team was in good form. Had some momentum. We're placing well. We're undefeated for a good bit of it. So it was hard for me to get back in the lineup, because
Mm-hmm.
from a coach standpoint, the team is playing well. It's not the time towards the end of the season to really start changing things up. And that's something I
Right.
understood, and that was an unfortunate reality of it. And of course, I thought that I could come on and make a difference, but it was also understandable, and I just knew that I had to come back harder this next season.
Yeah. I wanna say I appreciate you being candid about it, because this podcast is to help these players that are coming into this understand, like you say, a compressed season, 2 games, what is it? 2 games a week,
Yeah.
6 weeks. I mean, most people can do the math, and like you said, it goes fast. So you taking care of your body and being aware also helps the team, because like you said, but I also understand that as ballers, nobody wants to come out of a match. You
Mhm.
know what I mean? So, I do appreciate that. Now, let's talk about something that I talked about with other players, the year-end meeting, right? Because I talked about this with Jacob Green. And of course, from basically when you were very young, well, as soon as you hit academy, year-end meetings are a part of footy. So Dylan, what were your takeaways from your first college year-end meeting?
Yeah, well, honestly, I didn't know what to expect because at Baltimore Armor we didn't have year-end meetings. So
Oh,
I,
oh,
I
uh-oh.
yeah, so I went into that meeting honestly not knowing what to expect. Like obviously I talked to some teammates. I was like how does this meeting go? Like what's about to happen? But yeah, overall the meeting was positive. I went in there. It was all three of the coaches, head coach, and then associate and our assistant. And yeah, we kind of just went um all the way through the season. First, they asked me how I felt the season was individually and overall. And yeah, I thought it was good individually. Up until the injury, I was getting good opportunities, getting good minutes. And then the injury happened, which obviously sucked. But after that, I the minutes lessened a little bit.
Uh-oh.
But yeah, so first they asked me how I felt my season was individually and overall. And then they told me how they thought it was individually overall. And then we kind of just went game by game, um, talked about the minutes, talked about what we expected or what they expected next season. The big thing that they told me overall was just one, staying healthy because missing a month, that's a big chunk of the season. And then two, they talked about my fitness. They were like, they thought that the whole season they couldn't really tell that I was ever like 100% fit. So that was one thing going into the spring and going into next fall, just really focusing on being fully fit, and like growing into my body physically and like developing more strength in the weight room. So those were the main two like takeaways on the field play. They thought was good, thought it was positive, a lot of potential. Um, yeah, so it honestly went pretty
Mm-hmm.
well for how I think. So I'm just looking forward going into the spring
Okay.
and building
And I
my
guess I should make it clear it's not technically a year-end meeting, it's the end of the season.
yeah,
And then they tell you what they want you to come back with in the spring. All
yeah.
right. So Ram, what was your year-end meeting experience like?
Yeah, so I sat down and then all the coaches were there. And from there, the first thing we actually started with were grades. So they brought up the grades, checked absences, because our coach is really, he really makes clear that we're student athletes. So if the grades aren't right, then there's something we're gonna have to work on for the next semester. So my grades checked out, and then we went into the soccer side of things, where they had asked me how I saw the season went, and I basically said that I thought it was going well, and then following the injury, it didn't totally, like, for me individually, it felt like it definitely hurt me, and they had agreed. It's an unfortunate part of the game, short season, and those injuries can affect how your season plays out. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and then they went about what they thought I needed to work on as a player to help me, prepare for the spring, and then add on to that and build on that for this coming fall season. And then they got into what I was going to be doing over the break. So they're making sure that, I wasn't just going to be, just sitting at home chilling for, all that time leading into spring. They're making sure that I had a plan. And if I didn't have a plan, then, I definitely needed one, because, that's just what it takes for you to, make an impact as an underclassman, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So, for me, it was uh they thought that, like, they wanted me to improve my 1v1 defending, just become locked down, just extra efficient, and just better with that as a whole. And what that meant for me was just a lot of playing, but not just just pick up. Well, just pick up as well. Pick up is very important. But also organize 1v1 defending against great attackers, and which is something that I did a lot over the break. And coming into the spring, they've definitely noticed some improvement from what they told me. So it's just a lot of
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. But the spring,
Okay.
the end of season meeting is just really big for preparing for the coming season.
All right. Now, this whole thing, I'm gonna have you guys your guys' Instagrams across the screen so that people know. And also we're gonna have some pictures of you guys when you were little.
All
Maybe
right.
some video running, things like that. So people are watching on YouTube, it's good. They're gonna see more than if they just do the podcast. Now, I want to go into what I would call a bonus question because it's something that comes up. Um, there's gonna be a limit this year of 28 players. Now, I looked at the Boston roster. You guys had 28.
Yeah.
Ramsey, your team had 31. All right. Now, I know obviously between grad students, graduates, things, teams lose players every season anyway. But what I also want to know, and what a lot of people talk about on social media, which I know you guys aren't really paying any attention to, is the rise of the international player involved with college soccer. So I'm assuming you had internationals on your team, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So Ram, okay, you can tell me what are the differences you see between internationals in the way they look at the game. I'm talking about the soccer side, right? And what maybe the American players Like, what are some of the differences you see in the way they approach everything?
Yeah, I'd say from like an average or general standpoint, they are really they're really professional. A lot of them at some point had played for, maybe in a professional academy, wherever they're from, and they have brought those standards from where they're from here to the college. Um, so there's definitely there's differences. You definitely notice the differences in how they approach the game versus how your average American D1 player would approach the game. And obviously there are outliers on both sides. But from like a general standpoint, you can it's a lot of it's just overall professionalism and mentality, especially the mentality, because you know they're a lot of them they're dogs, what I'm saying, and they also have maybe some of that grit and nastiness that you need on the field that is easy to miss out on when you're maybe coming up through the system here.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
All right. And Dylan, what about you? I hope you didn't take all your good points.
I mean, we didn't really have too many internationals. We just had two kids from Canada. So it's
Uh,
not
I don't know if I count them as internationals, man.
yeah, we didn't that's really all we
Okay.
have.
Wow, that's interesting. That's interesting. And like I said, I won't go into all the rigmarole about whether there shouldn't be any of that, because that's something that could be argued ad infinitum. But the thing is that I've noticed is that overall, and that goes with the teams that don't carry a lot of internationals. I just feel like the level has risen for American footy at this point. You guys are a part of that. I mean, you come from a team where you got two guys that are playing in the Premier League right now. You know what I mean? And so I will say, I mean, everybody knows I'm partial to the DMV, but like I said, that dog comes from you guys beating up on each other from very young. Um, so anything we're gonna tie it up. Like I said, I want everyone to follow these guys on Instagram, kind of watch their journey and give them some followers. Who knows? And oh, well, I got another one. What's the end goal for you, Dylan? I mean, are you just gonna do you want to just play 4 years and go into your career? Or are you gonna try to look into pro at some level, or what's your goal?
Yeah, I I think right now I'm just mainly gonna do the 4 years and then go get my degree, go to graduate school. That's the plan right now. Who knows,
Mm-hmm.
over the next few years, if I have like a breakout season or something, start talking about like MLS maybe. I definitely wouldn't be opposed to it. But yeah, right now,
Mm-hmm.
mainly just focus on the 4 years, get my degree, go to graduate school and enter my profession.
Okay, so footy got you somewhere, right? What about you, Ram? What's the goals?
Um, yeah, for me, the goal is definitely professional. I mean, still making sure I take it, one day at a time, one week at a time, a month at a time, 1 year at a time, but, I am definitely, with this program, is, working every day, trying to take steps to become a professional soccer player, because that is my end goal. Um,
Mhm.
and yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, hey guys, I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy day. I know Dylan, you're about to report to school.
Yep, yep.
Ramsey, you've been at school like 2 weeks. I guess you started training what, 2 days after you got there. And
Yeah.
I'm really proud of you guys. I mean, Dylan, you went north, Ram, you went south. And I know you guys talk and support each other, as do most of the players that are still playing that have ever played together. So thank you so much for coming on the Underground Footy Podcast. And I'll be catching up with you guys. We may do some follow up down the road. So be great.
All right. Sounds good. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you for having us.